I'm Stuart, 32 years old today. What should have been a celebration turned into crushing disappointment when I arrived at Riverside Grill to find an empty table. No family, no cake, no presents. When I finally checked my phone, my mother's message read, "We thought you'd be busy with work," while my sister added, "We ate without you." I closed my phone, paid for my untouched drink, and left the restaurant alone. I never expected that this birthday betrayal would change everything, and that months later, they'd be at my doorstep in tears. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how standing up for myself saved both me and my family. Growing up in suburban Michigan, our family appeared normal from the outside. 2 parents, 2 kids, a golden retriever named Max, and a 3-bedroom colonial with a white picket fence. But appearances can be deceiving. My childhood memories are a mixed bag of happy moments interrupted by tension and walking on eggshells around my mother's unpredictable moods. Everything changed when I was 14. I still remember coming home from baseball practice to find suitcases in the hallway. Dad sat me down at the kitchen table, his eyes red-rimmed, and explained he was moving out. "Your mother and I tried, Stuart. We really did," he said, his voice cracking. The divorce wasn't particularly ugly by typical standards, no screaming fights in court or custody battles, but the aftermath shaped our family dynamics in ways that would echo well into my adult life. My mother, Karen, had always been somewhat self-absorbed, but after the divorce, this trait amplified tenfold. She painted herself as the victim abandoned by her husband and left to raise 2 teenagers alone, despite the generous alimony and child support Dad provided. What hurt most wasn't the divorce itself, but watching my mother transform from someone who occasionally attended my baseball games to someone who could barely acknowledge my existence unless it somehow related to her own narrative. My sister Melissa, 3 years younger than me, aligned herself firmly with our mother. Perhaps it was a survival strategy, or maybe they genuinely shared a worldview I couldn't access. Whatever the reason, Melissa became my mother's echo chamber, reinforcing every perceived slight against them, and creating an us versus them mentality where Dad and I were perpetually cast as the villains. "You're just like your father" became the household insult lobbed at me whenever I expressed a need or opinion that didn't center on my mother's feelings. As a teenager trying to navigate my own identity, being compared to my absent father felt both confusing and isolating. Despite this, I found myself assuming the role of family peacekeeper. When Dad remarried 3 years after the divorce, I managed the fragile interactions during holidays and special events. When Melissa had a fallout with her high school boyfriend, I was the shoulder she cried on, despite her usual coldness toward me. When Mom needed her computer fixed, or a ride to the doctor, I rearranged my schedule without complaint. Through college at the University of Michigan, I maintained this role, driving 2 hours home on weekends to help with household repairs or family emergencies that somehow always coincided with my exam periods. I convinced myself this was normal, that families were messy, but worth the sacrifice. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at Harrington and Associates, an architectural firm known for its innovative, sustainable designs. Architecture had been my passion since childhood. I found peace in creating spaces where form and function coexisted harmoniously, perhaps compensating for the discord in my personal life. Over 8 years, I worked my way up from drafting basic components to leading my own design team on significant projects. 3 months before my 32nd birthday, I received the promotion I'd been working toward for years: Senior Design Director with a corner office and creative control over our firm's most prestigious accounts. The promotion came with longer hours temporarily as I worked to establish my vision and team structure, but the rewards, both financially and creatively, were substantial. During this time, I met Rebecca through a mutual friend at a charity fundraiser. Unlike previous girlfriends who grew frustrated with my family obligations, Rebecca understood complex family dynamics from her own experience with divorced parents. Her warmth, intelligence, and quiet confidence drew me in immediately. After a year of dating, we moved in together, creating our apartment into the harmonious space I'd always craved. "You should try again with your family," Rebecca suggested one evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset. "Not for them, but for you. Carrying resentment only hurts the carrier." Her wisdom made sense, and I redoubled my efforts to build healthy relationships with Mom and Melissa. I invited them to dinner, monthly sent thoughtful gifts on holidays, and made myself available whenever they called. My efforts were met with lukewarm appreciation at best, but I persisted believing that consistent goodwill would eventually break through their defenses. Birthday celebrations in our family had always been a complicated affair. As a child, my parties were modest compared to the elaborate events my mother organized for Melissa. As an adult, family birthdays meant expensive restaurant dinners, where I typically picked up the check while enduring subtle criticisms about my career choices, living situation, or relationship status. Despite these patterns each year, I approached family gatherings with renewed hope that this time would be different. This optimism persisted even after last Thanksgiving, when my mother spent the entire meal talking about Melissa's promotion, while never once acknowledging mine or Christmas, when my thoughtfully selected gifts for them were barely acknowledged, while I received a generic gift card and bathroom cologne set that still had the clearance sticker attached. Their family, I told myself repeatedly, and family is worth the effort. I had no idea that my 32nd birthday would finally teach me the difference between making an effort and being a doormat, a lesson that would ultimately transform all our lives. My 32nd birthday fell on a Thursday in April, right as Michigan was finally shaking off winter's grip. The first tulips were pushing through the soil in the community garden across from our apartment, and the air carried that distinctive spring scent of renewal. It felt symbolic somehow, a new year of my life, coinciding with nature's rebirth. 2 weeks before my birthday, I called my mother to confirm our traditional family dinner. Between my recent promotion and my plans to propose to Rebecca in the coming months, I had actual good news to share and was cautiously optimistic about the evening. Mom, I was thinking we could do Riverside Grill for my birthday dinner. I suggested mentioning the upscale steakhouse that had been my favorite since college graduation. They have that private back room we could reserve. Riverside. Oh, I suppose that would be fine, she replied, the hesitation in her voice, already suggesting she had other ideas. Melissa was mentioning that new place downtown Azul, I think it's called. Very trendy, apparently. Maybe another time, I said, firmly determined not to have my preference overridden as usual. It's been a rough few months with the promotion, and I'd like to celebrate somewhere comfortable and familiar. To my surprise, she agreed without further argument. Riverside it is then. I'll let everyone know. 6 o'clock. Perfect. I'll make the reservation for 6 people. You, me, Melissa, her boyfriend, Tyler, Dad, and Susan. Including my father and stepmother had been Rebecca's suggestion, and though I expected resistance, my mother simply sighed. Fine, Stuart. It's your birthday, after all. That simple acknowledgement felt like a victory. After hanging up, I immediately called Riverside Grill and secured their private dining area, providing my credit card to hold the reservation and pre-ordering a bottle of champagne to be chilled and ready upon our arrival. Next, I messaged everyone individually to confirm their attendance. Dad and Susan responded immediately with enthusiasm. Melissa sent a thumbs-up emoji. My mother didn't respond, but I assumed her silence meant agreement, since we'd just spoken. The following week, I deliberately cleared my schedule for the day of my birthday delegating projects to ensure I wouldn't be called into any emergency meetings. I wanted to be fully present for what I hoped would be a turning point in our family dynamics. 3 days before my birthday, I went shopping for a new outfit, something subtle but sharp. I settled on a navy blazer light blue button-down and charcoal slacks that Rebecca said brought out my eyes. I even splurged on new leather shoes, justifying the expense as part of my birthday gift to myself. Despite our sometimes strained relationship, I'd also purchased gifts for my family members, a vintage brooch for my mother, similar to one her grandmother had owned, concert tickets for Melissa and Tyler to see her favorite band, and a rare single malt scotch for my father. Rebecca watched me wrapping them the night before my birthday. You're really going all out, she observed, helping me tie a perfect bow on Melissa's gift. I want this to be different, I admitted. With the promotion settled, and us talking about getting engaged, it feels like the right time to try to heal old wounds. Rebecca kissed my cheek, but said nothing, her expression conveying both support and concern. She wouldn't be joining us for the dinner, having previously scheduled a visit to her parents in Chicago that weekend. Part of me was relieved. Family gatherings were tense enough without subjecting her to the potential drama. "Call me tomorrow night after dinner," she said before leaving for the airport that morning. "I want to hear all about it." The morning of my birthday dawned clear and mild. I woke to Rebecca's gift and card on the pillow beside me. She'd left before dawn for her early flight, and several text notifications on my phone. From Dad. "Happy birthday, son. Looking forward to dinner tonight." From Susan. "Happy birthday, Stuart. Can't wait to celebrate with you this evening." From Melissa. "HBD bro." From Mom. "Happy birthday. See you tonight." The messages from my mother and sister were characteristically terse, but I refused to let it dampen my spirits. They were making an effort to be there, and that was what mattered. I spent the morning enjoying a rare day off, going for a long run along the riverfront, treating myself to brunch at my favorite cafe, and even getting a haircut. By late afternoon, I was showered, dressed in my new clothes, and filling the gift bags with tissue paper. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized the confident man staring back at me. Gone was the eager-to-please boy who had spent decades seeking approval. In his place stood a successful professional, ready to engage with his family as equals. As I grabbed my keys and the gift bags, a fleeting sense of unease passed through me. I dismissed it as nerves and headed out the door, unaware that the evening ahead would reshape my understanding of family forever. I arrived at Riverside Grill 15 minutes early, partly from excitement and partly from habit. My father had instilled in me that punctuality was a form of respect. The restaurant's stone facade and warm lighting had always provided a sense of comfort, a feeling I hoped would extend to our family gathering. "Good evening, sir." The hostess greeted me, her professional smile welcoming after my drive through Thursday evening traffic. "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes. Under Stuart for 6 people at 6 o'clock. I reserved the private dining area in the back." She checked her tablet and nodded. "Of course, Mr. Stuart. Everything is ready for you and your party. Would you like to be seated now, or wait for the others in the bar?" "I'll go ahead and get settled," I replied, following her through the main dining room with its white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. The private room was even nicer than I remembered, intimate, without being cramped, with a round table perfectly set for 6, and subtle, recessed lighting that created a warm ambiance. "Your champagne is chilling," the hostess indicated the ice bucket beside the table. "Your server will be with you shortly. Enjoy your evening." Alone in the room, I arranged the gift bags on a side table and settled into my chair, checking my watch. 5:48. I pulled out my phone to scroll through birthday wishes on social media while waiting, including a particularly sweet message from Rebecca that included a photo of us from our weekend trip to Lake Michigan last summer. 6 o'clock came and went with no sign of my family. I wasn't immediately concerned. Traffic could be unpredictable, and punctuality had never been my mother's strong suit. A server appeared, introducing himself as Marcus. "Would you like to wait for your party before opening the champagne, sir?" "Yes, thank you. They should be here any minute," I assured him, more to convince myself than him. "I'll just have water for now." By 6:15, I began to feel a prickle of anxiety. I sent a group text at Riverside in the private room. "Everything okay?" No immediate response came. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Marcus returned twice to check if I wanted to order, his expression growing increasingly sympathetic with each visit. By 6:30, I called my sister's cell phone, only to be directed straight to voicemail. "Melissa, it's Stuart. I'm at Riverside Grill for my birthday dinner. Just wondering where everyone island, please call me back." 6:45 arrived, with still no word. The champagne in the ice bucket was surely reaching its optimal temperature, but my enthusiasm had long since chilled. I called my mother's number, which rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Around me, I could hear the restaurant filling with other patrons, couples on dates, families celebrating friends, gathering for Thursday night dinner. Their laughter and conversation filtered through the walls of the private room, making my solitude feel all the more pronounced. "Perhaps you'd like to order an appetizer while waiting," Marcus suggested during his next check-in, compassion evident in his voice. "Just a scotch, please." "Neat," I replied, my throat tight with humiliation. As 7 o'clock approached, I found myself staring at the empty chairs, each one representing a family member who hadn't bothered to show up or even call. The scotch arrived, and I took a larger sip than intended, welcoming the burn as it traveled down my throat. At 7:15, a full 75 minutes after our reservation time, my phone finally chimed with a message. It was from my mother, and as I read it, the floor seemed to drop out from beneath me. "We thought you'd be busy with work like always. Melissa found a reservation at Azul instead. Food is divine." Before I could process this, another message appeared from my sister. "We ate without you. Food was amazing. Too bad you missed it." Then came the photos, a group shot of my entire family seated around a table at Azul. My mother Melissa and Tyler, even Dad and Susan, all smiling with cocktails raised toward the camera. The next photo showed them surrounding a birthday cake with lit candles. My birthday cake at a restaurant I hadn't chosen, at a dinner to which I hadn't been invited. I stared at my phone in disbelief, scrolling through more photos that appeared in rapid succession. Gifts being opened, gifts meant for me being unwrapped by my sister with theatrical expressions of delight. My father pouring wine. My mother beaming beside a chef who had apparently come out to greet their table. The final message from my mother read, "Hope work isn't keeping you too late. We'll save you some cake." Maybe. The deliberate cruelty of it struck me with physical force. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a scheduling error. They had actively chosen to exclude me from my own birthday dinner, gone to a restaurant I had specifically not chosen, and then made sure I knew about it. I scrolled back to earlier messages confirming what I already knew. I had clearly communicated the time and place. Everyone had confirmed. This was intentional. Marcus approached again, clearly having observed my distress. "Sir, is everything all right?" I looked up at him momentarily, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. Finally, I managed. "No, it seems my party won't be joining me tonight. Could I get the check for the scotch, please?" "Of course, sir." "And the champagne?" "I didn't open it." "Please feel free to resell it." "Sir, this was a private reservation with a minimum charge." "I understand," I interrupted, pulling out my credit card. "I'll cover whatever fees are associated. I just need to leave." His expression softened. "It's your birthday, isn't it? I overheard when you made the reservation." I nodded mutely. "The scotch is on the house," he said quietly. "And may I suggest taking the champagne with you? It's already paid for." The kindness of this stranger compared to the callousness of my own family nearly broke me. I thanked him, left a generous tip despite his protests, and walked out with the unopened bottle, leaving the gift bags behind on the side table. They suddenly seemed like pathetic symbols of my one-sided effort to maintain relationships that clearly didn't matter to anyone but me. Outside, the spring evening had turned cool, but I barely noticed as I walked several blocks before realizing I'd left my car in the restaurant's parking lot. Turning around, I forced myself to breathe deeply, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. I wouldn't cry. Not here, not now, and certainly not over people who couldn't even be bothered to show up for me on the one day a year that was supposed to be about me. Driving home from Riverside Grill, I kept the radio off, preferring silence to any cheerful music that might emphasize my solitude. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, but I couldn't bear to look at it again. Each message felt like another twist of the knife already embedded in my chest. Once home, I placed the unopened champagne bottle on the kitchen counter and finally allowed myself to examine the full extent of my family's betrayal. The group photo showed them at Azul, the trendy new restaurant downtown that my mother had initially suggested. They weren't just at another restaurant. They were at the exact place my mother had wanted to go, the place I had specifically declined in favor of my own preference. My father sat between my mother and Susan, looking completely at ease, something that struck me as particularly bizarre given their divorce history. Melissa and Tyler were laughing at something, their heads tilted toward each other. Everyone looked relaxed, happy as if this arrangement was perfectly normal. The next photo showed my mother presenting a large chocolate cake, my favorite kind, with "Happy Birthday, Stuart" written in elegant script across the top. 32 candles blazed brightly, illuminating their smiling faces. Someone had taken the time to order a personalized cake for me yet hadn't bothered to ensure I would be present to enjoy it. The most painful image showed a small pile of wrapped presents on the table. I recognized Susan's distinctive silver wrapping paper and my father's characteristic blue gift bags. They had all purchased gifts, brought them to a dinner I wasn't at, and then apparently decided to open them in my absence. As I scrolled through the photos, a new message appeared from my mother. The chef at Azul recognized your father from his company's charity event last month. We got special treatment, complimentary appetizers, and dessert wine. You should really try this place sometime. The casual tone, as if nothing was wrong, as if I hadn't just been sitting alone in a restaurant waiting for them, broke something inside me. I scrolled up to read her original message again. We thought you'd be busy with work, like always. This excuse made no sense. I had initiated the dinner plans. I had made the reservation. I had confirmed with everyone individually. There was no possible way they could have thought I would be working instead of attending my own birthday dinner that I had organized. My sister's message was even more cutting. We ate without you. Food was amazing. Too bad you missed it. The gleeful exclamation points felt like deliberate barbs. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated exclusion, followed by intentional rubbing of salt in the wound. Another message arrived from Melissa. Got you a gift card to that coffee place near your office. Figured you could use the caffeine with how much you work. LOL. The casual LOL pushed me over the edge. I threw my phone across the room where it hit the wall before falling onto the couch cushions. Then I noticed another detail in the photos that I had missed initially. They were seated at a table for 5, not 6. They had never intended for me to join them. My mind raced through possible explanations. Had I somehow offended them all simultaneously? Was this revenge for some perceived slight? Or was it simply that they had grown so accustomed to dismissing my feelings that excluding me from my own birthday celebration seemed perfectly acceptable? I poured myself another scotch and sat in the darkness of our apartment, the emptiness echoing around me. Rebecca was in Chicago with her parents, probably enjoying a warm family dinner with people who actually wanted to be in each other's company. The contrast between her healthy family dynamic and whatever dysfunction I had been tolerating for years suddenly became stark. As the night progressed, more messages arrived. Casual tone-deaf comments about the evening's festivities, inside jokes I wasn't part of, and eventually, a video of them singing Happy Birthday to an empty chair that they had apparently designated as Stuart. My father, who I had always thought was more reasonable than my mother and sister, was clearly visible in the video, raising a glass to the empty seat with a smile. The performative nature of it, recording themselves, celebrating my absence, suggested this wasn't a spontaneous decision, but a planned event. They had actively chosen to exclude me, and then document it thoroughly to ensure I knew what I had missed. Around midnight, when the alcohol had dulled the sharpest edges of my pain, I received a final message from my mother. Hope you enjoyed your quiet evening. Sometimes it's nice to have time to yourself on your birthday. We missed you, but understood work comes first for you these days. The audacity of this statement, the blatant rewriting of reality, left me speechless. She was creating a narrative where I had chosen work over family, when in fact I had taken the day off specifically to celebrate with them. It was gaslighting in its purest form, making me question whether I had somehow miscommunicated my plans despite all evidence to the contrary. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on our balcony until dawn, watching the city lights, and replaying years of similar, if less extreme dismissals and exclusions. The time my high school graduation party was cut short because Melissa had a minor cold. The Christmas when my gift to my mother remained unwrapped under the tree while everyone else's were opened with enthusiasm. The family vacation photos where I was consistently positioned at the edge of the frame as if ready to be cropped out if desired. What hurt most wasn't just this single incident, but recognizing it as the culmination of a lifelong pattern. I had spent decades making excuses for their behavior, telling myself that family relationships were naturally complicated, that my expectations were too high, that their love was real, despite their actions suggesting otherwise. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating a day I no longer wanted to face, I made a decision that would change everything. I would no longer participate in the fiction that we were a loving family going through rough patches. Some relationships aren't worth saving, even perhaps especially when they're with the people who are supposed to love you most. Morning arrived with the harsh clarity that sometimes only follows a sleepless night. My phone had eventually fallen silent around 2 in the morning, but when I checked it over coffee, new messages awaited me. From my mother. Good morning, birthday boy. Did you enjoy your quiet evening? Sometimes it's nice to have alone time. From Melissa. Hey, I left your gift card on Mom's counter. You can pick it up whenever. No rush. From my father, Stuart, give me a call when you get a chance. Want to talk about a business opportunity. Not one of them acknowledged what had happened. Not one expressed remorse or even curiosity about why I hadn't responded to their messages. It was as if my feelings were so inconsequential that they didn't even register the possibility that I might be hurt. I set my phone down without responding and prepared for work. Though I had planned to take this day off as well, the thought of sitting alone in the apartment with my thoughts seemed unbearable. At least at the office, I could lose myself in blueprints and project timelines. My team greeted me with a small cake and card. When I arrived, their genuine warmth, making my family's behavior seem even more jarring by comparison. My assistant, Diane, immediately sensed something was wrong. Stuart, are you okay? You look like you haven't slept. Rough night, I admitted, attempting a smile that probably looked more like a grimace, but I appreciate this, really. We were surprised to see you today, she said, cutting a slice of cake and handing it to me. Didn't you mention family dinner plans last night? The question hit like a physical blow. Change of plans, I managed to say before retreating to my office cake untouched. Throughout the day, my phone continued to buzz with messages from family members, each one acting as if nothing unusual had occurred. By afternoon, the tone began to shift slightly. From Melissa, hello Earth, to Stuart. Did you get abducted by aliens or something? From my mother, Stuart, it's rude to ignore messages. We're beginning to worry. From my father's son, your mother's concerned. Give one of us a call when you can. The audacity of them expressing concern after what they had done fueled a simmering anger that actually helped me focus on work. I stayed late, burying myself in a complex design problem, until most of the office had emptied. When I finally checked my phone again, I had 17 missed calls and numerous text messages, their tone increasingly demanding. Rebecca called as I was driving home. Hey, birthday boy! How was dinner with the family? I hadn't planned to tell her immediately, wanting to process my feelings first, but the gentle concern in her voice broke my careful composure. I pulled into a parking lot and told her everything. The empty restaurant, the photos, the callous messages afterward. Oh, Stuart, she breathed, horror evident in her voice. I don't even have words. That's cruel. Deliberately cruel. The worst part is, they're acting like nothing happened, I said, surprised by how steady my voice remained, despite the emotion churning inside me. Like I'm being dramatic for not responding to their messages today? You're not being dramatic, Rebecca assured me firmly. What they did was inexcusable. What are you going to do? The question hung between us. What was I going to do? For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a possibility that had always seemed unthinkable: walking away from these relationships entirely. I don't know yet, I answered honestly, but I think I'm done making excuses for them. Whatever you decide, I'm with you, Rebecca promised. I can come home early if you need me. No, enjoy your time with your parents. Real parents who actually show up for their kids. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. After we hung up, I sat in my car for several minutes, considering my options. Confrontation had never been my strong suit, especially with my family. Past attempts to address issues had invariably ended with me apologizing for bringing up ancient history or being too sensitive. But ignoring the situation felt equally impossible. When I finally arrived home, I poured myself a glass of water instead of scotch, needing clarity rather than numbness. I opened my laptop and began typing an email. Not a heated reaction, but a calm, factual account of what had happened and how it had affected me. I detailed the reservation I had made, the confirmations I had received, and the experience of sitting alone in that private dining room while they celebrated without me. I concluded with, I need time away from all of you to reconsider what kind of relationship, if any, I want moving forward. Please respect my space by not contacting me until I reach out to you. After reading it through twice, I sent the email to my mother, father, and sister simultaneously, then blocked their numbers on my phone. The immediate sense of relief was so profound that I knew I had made the right decision. The following day at work, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specialized in family trauma, something I had considered for years but never pursued. That evening when Rebecca called, I told her about my email and phone blocks. "I'm proud of you," she said. "That took courage." "It doesn't feel like courage," I admitted. "It feels like giving up." "There's a difference between giving up and setting boundaries," she countered. "You're not giving up, you're finally standing up for yourself." Over the next week, my family found increasingly creative ways to bypass my blocks. Emails from new addresses, messages through mutual friends, even a handwritten letter from my mother delivered to my office. None contained apologies, only escalating guilt trips and accusations of overreaction. "Your mother is heartbroken," my father wrote in an email. "Whatever misunderstanding occurred, surely it doesn't warrant this silent treatment. If you're trying to punish us, mission accomplished." Melissa messaged through a college friend's Facebook account. "You can stop being dramatic now." Each contact reinforced my decision to maintain distance. Their inability to acknowledge wrongdoing or consider my feelings confirmed the unhealthy dynamics I had tolerated for too long. When Rebecca returned from Chicago, she brought fresh perspective and unwavering support. Together, we discussed what healthy family relationships should look like and what boundaries I needed to establish if I ever decided to allow them back into my life. "You deserve people who show up for you," she reminded me one evening as we walked along the riverfront, both literally and figuratively. For the first time in my adult life, I began to believe her. The constant weight of trying to earn my family's approval had lifted, allowing me to stand straighter, breathe deeper, and focus on relationships that added value to my life, rather than depleting me. As days turned into weeks, the desperate messages from my family gradually tapered off, replaced by occasional checking-in contacts that still contained no acknowledgement of their behavior. I maintained my silence, focusing instead on therapy work and building a life with Rebecca that wasn't shadowed by familial dysfunction. It wasn't easy. Years of conditioning had left me with a profound sense of responsibility for my family's emotions, but with each passing day, I grew more certain that I had made the necessary choice for my own well-being. Sometimes the most difficult decisions are also the most transformative. The weeks following my birthday became a period of unexpected personal growth. Without the constant drain of managing my family's emotions and expectations, I discovered energy I didn't know I possessed. My work reached new creative heights, earning praise from clients and senior partners alike. My relationship with Rebecca deepened as we spent weekends exploring hiking trails outside the city or trying new restaurants without the shadow of potential family drama hanging over us. My weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Martin helped me understand the patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades. "What you're describing is classic emotional neglect," he explained during one session. "Your needs were consistently secondary to your mother's and sisters, creating a dynamic where you became the caretaker rather than the child. But they're not bad people." I found myself saying the habitual defense mechanism still strong despite everything. "They just don't think about how their actions affect others." "Impact matters more than intent," Dr. Martin replied gently. "Whether they intended to hurt you or simply didn't consider your feelings, the result was the same." This perspective shift was revolutionary. I had spent years excusing behavior based on presumed good intentions while ignoring the actual harm caused. Recognizing this pattern allowed me to view past interactions with clearer eyes and set firmer boundaries for the future. As May turned to June, my family's attempts at contact became more creative and increasingly desperate. My mother sent a package to my office containing childhood photos and a note saying, "Remember when we were happy." My sister showed up at my favorite coffee shop near work, coincidentally arriving during my usual morning break. My father called my direct office line, bypassing my cell phone block. I maintained my distance, responding to each attempt with polite but firm reinforcement of my boundaries. "I'm not ready to talk yet," I told my father when he called. "I'll reach out when I am." "Your mother is beside herself," he argued. "This has gone on long enough, Stuart." "I disagree. I replied, surprised by my own calm. I'll contact you when I'm ready, not before. Rebecca witnessed this transformation with unwavering support. You're different, she observed one evening as we cooked dinner together. More centered. I feel different, I admitted. Like I've been carrying this invisible weight for so long that I didn't even notice until it was gone. Our relationship flourished in this new space. 3 months after my birthday debacle, I asked Rebecca to marry me during a weekend trip to northern Michigan. We had hiked to a secluded waterfall, and as the late summer sun filtered through the trees, I knelt on the mossy ground and presented the ring I'd been carrying for weeks. Yes, she said immediately, tears glistening in her eyes. 1,000 times, yes. We decided to keep our engagement private for a few weeks, savoring the joy between just the two of us before sharing the news. When we finally posted a simple photo of Rebecca's hand wearing the ring on social media, congratulations poured in from friends and colleagues. My family's reactions were predictably self-centered. My mother left a voicemail on Rebecca's phone, since mine was still blocked. I can't believe I had to find out about my only son's engagement on Facebook. This is beyond hurtful, Stuart. Melissa sent a text to Rebecca. Congrats, I guess. Hope Stuart plans to include his actual family in the wedding, unlike his birthday where he bailed on us. Their attempts to rewrite history continued, but now, instead of doubting myself, I recognized the manipulation for what it was. Their inability to acknowledge any wrongdoing only reinforced my decision to maintain distance. That fall, Rebecca and I found a craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood with mature oak trees lining the streets. The process of buying our first home together, selecting paint colors, planning renovations, creating a space that was truly ours, brought a depth of joy I hadn't known was possible. We should have a housewarming party, Rebecca suggested, as we unpacked boxes in our new kitchen. Just close friends and colleagues who have supported us. The idea of hosting a celebration without the tension of family dynamics was liberating. We sent invitations, planned a menu, and transformed our half-unpacked home into a warm, welcoming space for the people who genuinely cared about our happiness. The party was a success filled with laughter and good conversation. My work mentor raised a toast to our new home and upcoming marriage, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely seen and valued by the people surrounding me. Throughout this period of growth, my mother and sister monitored my social media with hawk-like attention, commenting on posts in ways that alternated between passive-aggressive jabs and overly enthusiastic support. They had constructed a narrative where my distance was a temporary overreaction rather than a deliberate choice, maintaining the fiction that we would eventually return to our dysfunctional status quo. Their denial reached new heights when my mother commented on a photo of our new house. Can't wait to see my new guest room. When I visit, every mother dreams of her son having such a beautiful home. Rebecca, seeing the comment before me, asked, "Are you planning to respond to that?" I shook my head. Engaging would only validate the fantasy that nothing has changed. My silence speaks louder than any reply could. 6 months after my birthday, as we prepared for Thanksgiving, the inevitable invitations arrived. My mother left a voicemail on my work phone. "Stuart, it's Mom. We're having Thanksgiving at 4 o'clock as usual. Please let me know if you're bringing Rebecca so I can set the table accordingly." The assumption that I would simply appear after months of no contact perfectly encapsulated our dysfunctional dynamic. In the past, I would have acquiesced, showing up with a side dish and a forced smile pretending the hurt hadn't happened. Instead, Rebecca and I planned our own Thanksgiving, inviting friends who had become our chosen family. The relief of breaking tradition was enormous. No walking on eggshells, no bracing for subtle criticisms, no leaving with the emotional exhaustion that had characterized every family gathering in my memory. As the holidays approached, my family's messages grew increasingly frantic. The realization that I might actually miss Christmas seemed to finally penetrate their denial. My father sent an email with the subject line, "Enough is enough. Stuart, this has gone beyond reasonable boundaries. Your mother cries every time she sees your empty chair at dinner. Melissa is hurt and confused. Whatever point you're trying to make has been made. It's time to be an adult and reconcile with your family." For the first time, I responded directly, "Dad, I am being an adult by choosing not to participate in relationships that cause me pain. I'm not trying to make a point. I'm living my life with people who respect and value me. When and if I decide to reconnect, it will be on terms that ensure my well-being is considered. His reply came within minutes. I don't recognize the son I raised in these cold words. Perhaps I wrote back, that's because I'm finally becoming the man I need to be, rather than the son you expected me to be. With that exchange, a strange peace settled over me. I had spoken my truth without anger or defensiveness, standing firmly in my new reality. Whatever happened next would happen on my terms, not theirs. 3 months after my birthday, a warm Saturday in July, the doorbell rang at our apartment. Rebecca and I were packing boxes for our upcoming move to the house we had purchased, surrounded by bubble wrap and the controlled chaos of transition. Can you get that? I called from the bedroom, where I was wrapping framed photos. Moments later, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of concern and wariness. Stuart, your family is here. All of them. The statement took several seconds to process. What do you mean, all of them? Your mother, father, and sister. They're standing in our living room right now. A surge of emotions, anger, anxiety, curiosity, washed over me as I set down the photo I'd been wrapping. Did they say why they're here? Rebecca shook her head. Your mother is crying. Your father asked if they could speak with you. I told them I needed to check with you first. Taking a deep breath, I considered my options. I could refuse to see them maintaining the boundary I had established. I could agree to a brief conversation with Rebecca present as support. Or I could face them alone, testing whether the strength I had developed over these months of separation would hold in their presence. Tell them I'll be out in a minute, I decided, needing the time to center myself. When I entered the living room, the scene was surreal. My mother sat on our couch tissues, clutched in her hand mascara, streaking her cheeks. My father stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back in the military posture he adopted when uncomfortable. Melissa hovered near the door, as if planning a quick escape if needed. Stuart, my mother began immediately, her voice breaking. Please forgive us. We miss you so much. The directness of her plea surprised me. In our family's emotional playbook, apologies were rare and usually came wrapped in justifications and counter-accusations. This straightforward request for forgiveness felt foreign. What exactly are you asking forgiveness for? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. My question seemed to catch her off guard. For whatever has upset you so much that you've cut us out of your life. And there it was, the familiar evasion, the refusal to acknowledge specific wrongdoing. My father stepped forward, perhaps sensing my withdrawal. Stuart, what happened on your birthday was inexcusable, he said, his voice steadier than my mother's. We should have been at Riverside Grill with you. Instead, we allowed ourselves to be persuaded to go elsewhere, and then compounded that mistake by sending those thoughtless messages and photos. His acknowledgement of the specific incident, rather than vague whatever, was a step forward, but the phrasing allowed ourselves to be persuaded still deflected responsibility. Who persuaded you? I asked, genuinely curious about the dynamics that had led to their decision. My father glanced at my mother, who looked down at her tissues. Melissa shifted uncomfortably by the door. It doesn't matter, my father continued. What matters is that we hurt you deeply, and we want to make amends. Rebecca had positioned herself slightly behind me, her presence a silent support. I gestured for everyone to sit, deciding that this conversation might be lengthy. To my surprise, they complied without argument, my mother and father taking the couch while Melissa perched on the edge of an armchair. I appreciate you coming here. I began choosing my words carefully, but I need to understand what happened and why, before I can consider moving forward. This wasn't a minor misunderstanding. You deliberately excluded me from my own birthday dinner that I had arranged, went to a restaurant I had specifically declined, and then sent me mocking photos and messages while I sat alone at Riverside Grill. My mother flinched at the blunt recounting, but I continued. Then, instead of apologizing when I withdrew, you accused me of being dramatic and overreacting. So, yes, I need to know exactly what you're apologizing for and why it happened in the first place. A heavy silence filled the room until Melissa surprisingly broke it. It was my idea, she admitted, her voice small. Mom wanted to try Azul, and you had insisted on Riverside again. I suggested we just go where we wanted. And, I don't know, teach you a lesson about always having to have your way. The absurdity of her statement that I, who had spent my life accommodating their preferences, was the one who always had to have my way, might have made me laugh in different circumstances. And sending me photos, making sure I knew exactly what I was missing. Was that also to teach me a lesson? She had the grace to look ashamed. That was cruel. I was angry because you'd been so busy with work lately, canceling our lunch plans twice, and it felt good in the moment too. I don't know, hurt you back. I didn't think about how it would actually feel for you. My mother interjected. We never meant to cause this much pain, Stuart. We thought you'd be upset for a day or two, and then everything would go back to normal. That's the problem, I replied, feeling remarkably calm, despite the conversation's intensity. Your definition of normal is a dynamic where my feelings don't matter, where I'm expected to absorb whatever treatment you dish out and keep showing up with a smile. My father leaned forward. We've had a lot of time to reflect on our relationship with you, Stuart. These months of your absence have been illuminating. We've realized patterns we never noticed before. Like what I pressed, needing specifics rather than generalities. Like how we've consistently prioritized Melissa's preferences over yours, my mother acknowledged, surprising me with her candor. How we've taken your support for granted while offering little in return. How we've dismissed your accomplishments while celebrating hers. Melissa looked uncomfortable, but didn't contradict our mother's assessment. The thing is, Stuart, my father continued, you made it easy for us to treat you poorly, because you never pushed back. You always forgave, always showed up, always took care of everyone else's needs. We became complacent, expecting you to maintain that role, regardless of how we behaved. His insight was startlingly accurate, reflecting almost verbatim what Dr. Martin had helped me understand in therapy. That's true, I acknowledged. I enabled the dynamic as much as you perpetuated it. But that doesn't excuse what happened on my birthday. No, it doesn't, my mother agreed, wiping fresh tears. Nothing excuses that. It was cruel and thoughtless, and we're deeply sorry. The sincerity in her voice, so different from her usual performative emotionality, caught me off guard. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I felt she was seeing me as a person with legitimate feelings rather than an extension of herself or a supporting character in her narrative. Where do we go from here? My father asked after another silence had stretched between us. I considered the question carefully. The past months had taught me that I could survive, even thrive, without their presence in my life. Yet family connections, however flawed, were part of my history and identity. Complete severance felt unnecessarily absolute, now that they had demonstrated at least some capacity for reflection and growth. If we're going to have any relationship moving forward, I said finally, it needs to be fundamentally different from what it was. I won't return to being the family emotional support system who receives nothing in return. I won't tolerate having my feelings dismissed or my boundaries ignored. What does that look like practically? My mother asked, seeming genuinely interested rather than defensive. It means I'll decline invitations that don't work for me without guilt or explanations. It means I'll call out disrespectful behavior in the moment rather than swallowing it to keep the peace. It means recognizing that our relationship is optional, for all of us maintained because we value each other, not because of obligation. My directness would have been unthinkable a year ago, but months of therapy and distance had given me clarity about what I needed and the courage to express it. We want you in our lives, Stuart, my father said quietly. We're willing to try this new approach, if it means having you back. And Rebecca too, my mother added, glancing toward where my fiancé stood. We owe you an apology as well, Rebecca. We've never made you feel truly welcome in the family. Rebecca nodded her acknowledgement, but wisely remained a supportive presence rather than an active participant in this family reckoning. I'm not making any promises today, I told them, but I'm willing to try small steps. Perhaps dinner next month at a neutral restaurant, just the adults. The relief on their faces was palpable, though tempered by the realization that our relationship would never return to its previous dynamic. They had lost the compliant, approval-seeking son they had taken for granted, and would need to build a new relationship with the man I had become. As they prepared to leave, my mother hesitated at the door. I am truly sorry, Stuart, not just for your birthday, but for years of not seeing you clearly. The simplicity and directness of her apology touched something in me that elaborate explanations couldn't have reached. "Thank you," I replied. "That means a lot." After they left, Rebecca wrapped her arms around me. "How are you feeling?" "Surprisingly okay," I realized. Neither triumphant nor devastated. Just clear. In the months that followed, we began the careful process of rebuilding connections on healthier terms. There were missteps, and old patterns occasionally resurfaced, but the fundamental dynamic had shifted. They had seen the consequences of their behavior and knew I would walk away again if necessary. I had discovered my own strength and would never again make myself small to accommodate their expectations. Our wedding the following spring included my family seated prominently, but not dominating the celebration. My mother's speech was gracious and appropriate, focusing on welcoming Rebecca, rather than centering herself. My father shook my hand with genuine pride, and Melissa made a sincere effort to connect with Rebecca's family. Looking back now, I realized that my 32nd birthday, painful as it was, became the catalyst for profound change in all our lives. Sometimes relationships must break completely before they can be rebuilt on healthier foundations. Sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply are capable of growth when confronted with the consequences of their actions. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to walk away even from family when staying would require the sacrifice of our self-respect. If you've ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones, I'd love to hear your experience in the comments below. Did walking away ultimately lead to healing, or was permanent separation the healthier choice? Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, family should be a source of support, not a site of sacrifice. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries even when it's difficult.